Hi, Paulette.
Good afternoon. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I have such a thing about Substack Lives, and I had to reschedule it and re-invite you. So,
I know, I saw that last minute, and hopefully other people are being able to join us as well. And welcome.
oh my goodness,
Technology.
a technology, and I thought I had it all figured out, but here we are. There's a few people. My friend Deb is here. Hi, Deb. So,
I'm just
thank you for being here.
I'm trying to look at the camera, but I can't quite get the angle right. So not quite sure what's going on.
Okay.
We'll fathom it out. Anyway, we're here and other people are joining us, which is fabulous.
Yeah.
So welcome, everybody.
Yes, welcome, and thank you for putting up with my nonsense. You would think that I'd figure this out by now, but I don't do enough. So thank you, and I'm going to take a breath so I could settle myself. And what I'd like to do is if you could just tell us where you are in the world, and I'll say where I am and what time it is and how we met. Really
Oh
briefly.
gosh. Okay, I'm in the UK. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm a bit disorientated with looking the other way. I'll try and excuse me fidgeting, everybody. Yeah, I can't remember when we met, Paulette. How long ago was it?
I don't know. I don't know. I not long after I started writing on Substack, and we just connected and reached out and had a lovely conversation on Zoom. And I've been reading you and following you for a really long time now. So thank you for being here. And before we just dive in, I want to say we're going to talk about Shakti today and the energies and just have a great conversation. And people who are joining us, please write anything in the chat if you have a comment or a question or want to get a point in. Uh, we'll do our best to read and respond. But I would like for you to tell people a little bit about your Substack and what you're also doing with Zara, because when we talk about Shakti and some of these yoga concepts, um, they could seem a little woo-woo or out there. And I even said that in one of our notes that you and I are going to try to take the woo out of Shakti. And I think it's so important for people to know that how grounded you are in the real world and what's happening, and that we're not walking around with rose-colored glasses on. At the same time, there's this powerhouse of energy that we in our ordinary everyday lives can access. So can you just share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I can. I can. And thank you for that invitation to do that. And I also want to thank you, and I'll get this one out the way as well, for suggesting that we talk about Shakti, because I recognize, having done yoga for nearly over 40 years in different ways, that it's not something I know very much about, which really surprised me. So I've been just digging a bit deeper and obviously looking forward to this conversation when we talk about it. And so I can learn more from you and your wisdom and your years of
Mm.
study.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So
Mhm.
thank you for that. And yeah, just I started on Substack a while ago and just redefining all the time what I'm actually doing, of trying to be of service in the world. So holding in one hand and space the realities of where we're living and what's going on in the world. So I do have a weekly book chat with the wonderful Zara from Claps Life. I thought Claps, the world was going to be so different about 20 years ago, when I thought it would be peak oil and climate change and things like that. And I dramatically changed my life. So I've been expecting what's happening now for over 20 years. So that's what I write about. I also share poetry because I think in times of trouble and turmoil, it's really important to have art, to have beauty, to have words that soothe us and inspire us. So, yeah, a very eclectic approach to, yeah, just how we live now.
Thank you. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think what you do is really important, and it shows the many aspects of us and the many aspects of the way Shakti shows up in the world. And for people that are joining us and may not be familiar with your work, one of the things that drew me, I think, to you, Susan, too, was when you chose a poem and then you would read it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I could just be bathed in the the poetry itself, the poems you chose, and then of course your voice and the way that you recite them would just touch me. So so thank you. Mutual gratitude society here, and I appreciate that. So Shakti, where should we start?
Yeah, let's start by what it is, because I felt so ignorant. I thought, what, it's a word that's bandied around, but what does it actually mean? And what does it mean to you then, Paulette?
Mm, mm. Well, one of the thing about some of these Sanskrit words, and I am by no means a scholar. I have had the privilege of studying with scholars for many years, and so I've been exposed to this world. But so I'm not a scholar, and I can't say I can recite or read Sanskrit. But one of the things that I really love about some of the Sanskrit words that I remember is that they are so textured and layered, and they have it's like eating a layer cake. There's all these different delicious layers that you just can imbibe, and that's how some of the words are. And so Shakti, that's one of the words. Shakti is, you can often hear it uh, be the name of a goddess, sort of the goddess, the mother of all, and it means power. And so for me, what Shakti is, I was brought up in Catholic religion. And so when I started seeking beyond that um, dogma, I think I related to the Tantra world because one of the things that's said is that the goddess, universal intelligence, divine intelligence, wears many faces. It isn't just this one aspect. And I could relate to that because we have many faces. And so to me, Shakti is what permeates all of life. It's like I'm not you have gone through the years of planting and being this, I forget what you call it in the UK, you have a word for it, but I would say a farmer or a gardener. But so I've just started gardening in the last couple of years, and I'm not very good at it. But when I plant the seeds and I start to see them, it's so exciting to me to see the little shoots start to come up and life start to bloom. I have actually stopped in my tracks thinking, like, what is that causing that plant to bloom? What is moving the leaves of the tree? Okay, it's wind, but where's the wind? And so to me, Shakti is that formless form, and it permeates all of life. It is energy, it's vibration, that it's a hum that is life itself. Okay.
Hmm. Yeah, very interesting. It'd be good to hear what other people's views of what Shakti is as well. And one of the things that I liked about it, because I remember getting the Sally Kempton book and reading it, and I thought it was really interesting. But this time looking at it again, and this was one of the purposes, wasn't it, of doing this live this afternoon, about how we could take Shakti, which is an ancient pantheon of Hindu and tantric philosophy, and make it practical. How can it be used today? And the conclusion I've come to is that this is sacred knowledge. This is transformational information, because it is about all of creation, and it's using myths to explore our own potential. It's multifaceted, but that's one of the aspects that I've been looking at in the last few days, learning more about it.
Absolutely. And if anybody that's watching wants to pop something in, their definition, their feeling, their what they feel is Shakti. We'd love to hear. So please feel free to join us in that capacity. So yes, Shakti is it's the force that creates. It's the force that helps us to question and seek and to know ourselves. And because it comes in many forms, we talk about the Shakti as the different forms of the goddesses. And there are so many myths and stories. And one of my teachers, who I did a Zoom with, used to say, be as many faces of the goddess as possible. And so we give the Hindu tradition gave these names to the goddesses to explain different levels, different types of vibration, different types of energy. So for us in today's world, today here in the US is the No Kings March. And so when I think of the people of Minnesota, the people that are thousands and thousands of people who are going to go out and march today and protest No King's Day, I think of the energy that we need to embody to be able to create the sign that speaks to us, that will express how we're feeling in this moment. And so there's that goddess of creativity. So maybe it's the goddess of beauty that we want to actually make a really cool, beautiful sign. It doesn't have to be, this ugly thing with cardboard sign. It could be, but it could be really creative. That's a Shakti energy. And then to actually get in your car and drive and march with people and maybe have other people protesting against you, that takes a certain level of fortitude and perhaps courage. The name of your Substack is Courageous Conversation. So it takes a certain amount of courage. That's a vibration. That's a Shakti. So we often talk about Shakti as the goddess, Shakti as the different faces of the goddess, but they're energies. Shakti is energy. And so what do we need individually and collectively at this time? Externally, there's so much happening, and for people in their own personal lives, so much is happening. So what is it that we need in our own life, and how do we learn to access these energies, I think, is also important. So when we go to March later, there's also a certain feeling of, we feel so powerless right now. In many ways, we feel powerless. But if we could remember that that Shakti is an innate power, that just learning how to access that power by, maybe, I heard somebody the other day say something like, well, marching will do nothing. Well, if we do nothing, nothing will happen. So we have the power to do small things, little things that could create bigger things. And all of that is Shakti, from planting a seed to doing something like this.
Yeah, everything is energy, isn't it? And yeah, a few things on that, because I saw it was No King's Day, and thinking about the goddesses and which ones, what I like about them, they all have specific identities, energies, resourcefulness, increasing our capacities. And, you might want to call up Durga or Kali. Durga being that protective energy. And as you say, we all have them within us. And the other thing I wanted to add, because there's so many different exercises and practices that you can bring in. And obviously yoga is one of them, mantra is another, and mudras. And this whole thing about things are changing. We are in a transitional age. It is chaotic, it is demanding. And, these goddess energies are needed now because they are creative. Everything that Shakti is about creativity, isn't it? As you said, from painting a sign to thinking about how you'll be today and what you're doing. And they are both nurturing and destructive and necessary so that the old can be gone. And that's an energy that needs to be called upon by all of us. And this consciously choosing how we're going to manage our state, then Shakti is an ancient technology to help us, isn't it? Summon up. Like I summoned up can't say it.
Saraswati?
Sarasvati, thank you, who is the goddess of speech, but obviously I didn't call her strong enough. Yeah, I need to do more. But, this whole idea of, especially if we're feeling hopeless, which you just mentioned, Paulette, maybe, we have cosmic energies that we don't understand, energies that we've lost touch with. Reading about and knowing from my visits to India how there are shrines all over the place where people are constantly in touch with their spiritual aspect and their connection to the earth. And Shakti is like everything vibrates, everything is animism, isn't it? And the same in Japan, where people just come off the street and pop in and ring a bell and make a prayer and then go back on the street and continue their business. We don't have that. We're so out of touch with that. And maybe that's the missing gap now, that we do need to be kept informed. We do need to be clear and discerning. But maybe we also need to call in some cosmic energies. I don't know what you think of that, or everybody else thinks of that. Let us
Yeah,
know.
um, I I think that's fabulous, and I love that, and that was one reason I wanted for you to introduce yourself and what you're doing in your Substack and what you're doing with Zara, because you are in the real world. You're in touch with what's happening, and there is this bigger mystery that we have cut ourselves off from. And so these stories and these energies, these archetypes are all within us. And again, if anybody wants to pop into the chat, please feel welcome to do that. Um, you mentioned that some things have to collapse, some things have to uh, be destroyed, and that is the energy of Kali. And many years ago, I was at a retreat with one of my teachers, and he introduced the Kali Yuga, which is what we're at the end. We're actually at the beginning of a new era, but it's hard to see that because there's still this destruction. And when he first talked about it, I wasn't that young chronologically in my age, but I was very young. And so I just freaked out. Like, what do you mean? Kali also means dark, or so we're in this sort of dark age. And it's a cycle. And so cycles happen and things are collapsing for newness to come. But we have to be aware, which is what you and the work that you do and so many people are doing, to be aware that there's more going on that we don't see and understand, and that these energies, you mentioned Durga and Kali and Saraswati and Lakshmi, and Lakshmi's often known, especially in the West, the way we co-opt things, she's known for abundance and wealth and money. I have a statue, a murti of her, but she's also, Lakshmi energy is also about equanimity, about finding this ability to give and to receive, to see the beauty. You talked about why poetry is so important, and I wrote about that not long ago. Part of the resistance is to create, is to make sure that we are in the creative essence and creative energies to be to show history, to show beauty, to show hope. You and I have this thing about hope. I turn to hope, and you're like, no, hope. But one of my teachers used to say, hope is what's possible. And I like that definition. So I think that when we could turn to ritual or the mantras or the mudras, they may seem very esoteric and like, oh, seriously? But if they give you a touchstone to open you and to find that inner resilience to what's my part in this? What can I do? Maybe it's not marching. Maybe it's not growing food, but there's something. There's something. Maybe it's writing poetry. So to the creative life forces within each of us, and that is Shakti itself. So finding, I think for me, when this world, I think one reason too that you might not have heard of Shakti so much is that it is more of a tantric yoga expression, I think, than classical yoga. So it may not be as widely known, but I think that it's becoming a little bit more widely known. And one thing you said that I want to mention is that we think of the goddesses are purely feminine in gender, but it is more than that. And I want to make sure, if it's new for some people, that it isn't just this, the women are rising and we're going to take over the world. It is finding this balance of the masculine and feminine in each of us, no matter how we identify, what our gender is, and how we move through the world. And so Shakti has this feminine energy, but without her consort, without the masculine energy, neither one are in their fullness. Neither one can move forward in the purpose of their lives. So I wanted to make sure that we talk about that a little bit, that it does have this divine feminine, but it is not gender specific.
Yeah, nice to clarify that, because I have to say that was one of the things. Yeah, because I read a lot about the divine feminine and about women, and they're the next Sangha and all of that. And that's not right, in my view. We need to bring the men with us. They need to bring us with them. And it's the duality, isn't it? It's either or. And the world is not like that. And the truth behind it, and that's one of the things I'm really enjoying about it, is the myths. So these are archetypes, and there are sort of really old and ancient stories about them, and Shiva and Satya, and how they're married, and all the different goddesses and the connections. And as you said, in that pantheon, they can't exist without each other. And that just as men have female energies, we have masculine energies. So it's exploring all of those. And like in many traditions, and that where it does fit with the yoga, is that it's about helping us reach our next evolution, our potential, as some people call it, to be our true selves, because that's what this time is demanding of us. Yeah, we've got a comment coming through. What comes to mind is the old, and this is from Deborah, what comes to mind is the old concept, current of grace. Shakti is the current. Yeah, it is the current, isn't it? It's the energy that runs through everything. And there's a different energy running through everything now. And that's why these times are so pivotal, Paula, aren't they? We have a choice now about whose vision and whose imagination and what we create for the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, beautifully said. Absolutely. And to Deb's point, Deb and I have known each other for many, many years. I miss her. She's back in Arizona. And we studied with Dr. Douglas Brooks for many years, who I did the Zoom with, if people want to go back and find that recording. And several years ago, I'm on my second book, but several years ago, I wrote The Breakaway Girl. And I asked him if I could use this quote of his. And he said, absolutely. So, to Deb's point, in your vulnerable moments, you are held by the current. In your empowered moments, you swim with the current. In your ultimate moments, you and the current are one. I just absolutely love that. And that is all Shakti.
That's lovely. I like that as well, isn't it? Because it is about coming to oneness, and being in the connection of all of life, all of creation, and what is happening now. And yeah, about love and about devotion to life when there is so much that is destructive to life going on. You know, Shakti can be like a life raft, something that can keep us buoyed, something that can encourage us to imagine a different world. Because I think when I look at, and I have been doing some of the practices, a lot of it is about the imagination, isn't it? About going, as we know as people who do yoga, that going into the inner body, imagining that you're spatial, imagining that you have cords that go down to the center of the earth, imagining that you're in connection with the sky. And imagination is something that fascism doesn't have. It is
Mhm.
very devoid of beauty and imagination and creativity. It's the same old playbooks and the same corruption and exploitation and oppression. And everything that we do that is creative and joyful and beautiful and in service to life is resistance.
Yes, well said, my friend. Yes. And, um, science, obviously, you talk about imagination, and science has proven that now, what the ancients knew. And so, Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and so many out there who are doing this work will tell you that we can change the brain, we could change how we think, and we could change um what's happening through our imagination, through meditation, through the things that we create. I think when times are like this, creativity, art, imagination is even more important. That is the resistance as well. And, sometimes when I go to sit and write a post or something, I think about, um, is this doing anything? Why should I be writing about this now? But back to finding the ways within ourselves that speak to this time, and to put something out there that is creative. All of that truly matters, and it does have that ripple effect. So I'm wondering too, like, we speak about yoga a lot, and I want to also make a point. I don't know who's on here, who's listening, um, but my teacher that I just read his quote, he doesn't practice yoga on the mat. So asana, the postures, are just one little aspect of what we consider yoga. And so you mentioned mantra, mudra, oming. Um, but the way we see the world is yoga. The way we participate in the world, yoga means to yoke ourselves. So what are we yoking ourselves to? What are we he used to say, talk about, we're all in bondage, so what are we binding ourselves to? And I think that's really important to many of your points, like, what are we doing? We could be bound to this thoughts of hopelessness and despair, and we will have those moments, we will ride that current. but we could also bind ourselves to like-minded people and to expansion rather than stay in that contracted state.
Yeah, very much so. Beautifully said, Paula. And what's great about what you've just said is that we can choose and be discerning about what we do. And our thoughts are Shakti, our
Yeah,
energies, everything, everywhere we focus. And I think the most important thing, and you covered it by what you've just said, is to be questioning, because the difference is that you're consciously making choices. And I think what's going on in the world at the moment is waking, I was going to swear, waking us up, waking the
that's
fuck
okay.
up.
Go ahead. That's
Yeah,
shocking.
waking the fuck up. Just when everybody wants to be asleep and in denial, and there's more and more trauma and bad news and dreadful things happening, and it's almost going like, if you don't wake up, if you don't participate, this is going to continue. You are powerful. You have more people who want peace, who believe in love, who believe in life, who are out there gardening like you, or out there making signs or weaving or doing whatever, than there are those who are destructive. And if we wake up, we will find our power. I don't have the answers. I'm reading a lovely book at the moment, and I don't know how to pronounce her name. She's Turkish, East Telemerican, I think. Anyway, it's called Nation of Strangers and about finding home in the 21st century. So she's writing about how we're unhomed at the moment, that we don't really belong in this world. We
Mm,
want another world. And she writes beautifully about it. I really recommend it. And one of the things that I read this morning was she said, and I'm thinking about this with No King's Day, and I wish everybody really well with that, is and safety and fun and everything as you get out on the street. She says our new political home will have to be like a centaur, half political party and half street protest. We have to reinvent. We have to reinvent ourselves. This is
mhm.
a evolutionary stage. This is exciting. This is like a whole new world coming in and emerging that we probably won't see in our lifetime, but we know we're planting the seeds. And we need to know how we govern ourselves, how our morality is. The old ways of doing things is no longer working, is no longer acceptable. And that's why we're out there protesting in whatever way, shape, or form we choose. And that's a great thing.
Absolutely. And it reminds me, I know because of No Kings, that, that's forefront in our minds, in my mind today, that during these difficult times, we can shut down and become overwhelmed and be reactive. But each time we've gone now, I don't know if this is the third one, I can't remember, but the crowds just grew. And it wasn't just the white hairs, it wasn't just old, leftover hippies. It was young families and children, and people were passing water around. And so it is being redefining what it means to be a good neighbor and to be a good citizen. And it gives me hope for what is possible. And I think that's really a good point, Susan, that you're saying that because it could feel so much and so awful and so overwhelming, that the despair can take over. But it also, in that seam, is the possibility. There is excitement, there is joy. People, will be laughing and sharing stories. But it doesn't just end there then. You don't go home with your sign and wait for the next time, you know, talking to people and figuring out what our each individual and maybe our local next steps are. And I think, to circle back to Shakti then, how we find those energies, the stories, the myths, the tales, whether it's meditation or it's a walk in nature and really remembering that we are part of nature, we're not separate from nature. Just find the ways that help us to feel resilient, to feel powerful, to find that within ourselves and to find the joy. I think some of the greatest resistance is to stay joyful, to delight
Yes.
in life.
Yeah, very much so. And for each of us to have a whole repertoire of rituals, practices, as you said, it might be a walk in nature, it might be a few hours just watching Netflix. It can be anything where we resource ourselves because we have to recognize that it's tough now and it's going to get tougher. This is not going to sort itself out overnight. We are in for the long haul. And therefore, we need to look after ourselves, don't we? And our Shakti, our energy. And I love the fact that there is so much choice. And I was listening to Sally Kempton, who I believe you studied with. I mean, she has a beautiful audiobook, which I really recommend to people if this is new to you, or even if it's not, where she sings and recites some of the mantras. Yeah, I've got the book. I've got the book. And but there's some audiobooks which are just a delight to listen to with meditations. And she says you can choose your practice based on your level of consciousness,
Yes.
based on your state. If you're agitated or triggered, and I think the tantric is like contracted. When you feel expansive, when you feel generous, when you feel warm to the world. And when you feel contracted, you just want to hide away, you feel overwhelmed. So there's a range of possibilities of things that you can do that would match where you are at this time.
That's a great point. Thank you. Yes, because we the Shakti meets us where we're at. And isn't that true in whatever modality, wherever you're at, whatever you're studying, Buddhism, whatever, the teacher will meet you where you're at. And so for me, the Shakti is a teacher, and that it invites us to know ourselves on that deeper level and to expand our level of awareness. you know, there's words that I've used through the years that have started to feel a little bit like overused or sort of yoga speak, but our level of consciousness, that's really important to know where we're at in the world, if we've heard of this concept or not. There's no judgment. It's just where you're at and what our own personalities tend to be. Like, again, from the yoga world, we have our constitutions were made up of the elements, and so some of us have more air, some of us have more fire. And what that means, I have a lot of air, and so if I get agitated or afraid, then I become more fearful, as my anxiousness levels rise. So to know to know yourself is part of engaging with Shakti. To know yourself, to know your level of awareness, and to be willing to explore that more. And to know, okay, I react when this happens. What can I do to be more responsive than reactive? So all of that, I think that's great. And I think I can write in here. I'm just so bad at this. Tell me the name of the book that you just said.
Oh, I'll put it in the link when I send it out, but it's called Nation of Strange. Yeah, 21st, Finding Home in the 21st Century, I think it's called. I'll put it in the link. And her name is East, ECE, Temalakarin, I think. I can't pronounce it. But she's written quite a few books. And Yeah, finding home in it's beautiful, and it's so relevant to what's happening now, because she had to leave Turkey because her life was in danger. She was a
Mm,
journalist, and she talks about fascism, and the book is about how we don't recognize how fascism is also coming for us, that we think that it's happening somewhere else in the world, and that's the shock, isn't it, that it's now happening in our own countries. And just that whole aspect of, we're now dealing with things that people in the past, our ancestors, and that's the beauty of Shakti, isn't it? That these are from the Rig Veda. These are ancient ways in which people navigated their own tough times and their own difficulties. And why not incorporate some of these ancient technologies, so some of these practices, which must have been good to survive the thousands of
right,
years? They must have had some value, otherwise they would have gone, wouldn't
right,
they?
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to read what Randolph's just said? And thank you. Anybody wants to pitch in or ask a question or anything, please do.
A metaphorical picture that helps me understand the dynamic of Shakti, source energy, is that it manifests as a planted seed, and the creation can be either a death, promoting, I should have my glasses on, promoting onto the husk of the seed by extracting. I think that's all of it. Yes. Yes, that's beautiful. And one of the things that I thought was so cool too is that you're in the UK, and I wanted to point that out, is that we're on opposite ends, right? We're in different countries. So sometimes I think we feel maybe a little, well, of course, what's happening in this country is like dramatic. Um, and we feel so all alone as we are becoming more alienated from our allies. But it's happening all over the world on some level or another. So becoming aware of that also, knowing that, across the world, you are there, Susan, bringing light into the world, doing what needs to be done, is inspiring and brings a level of comfort. And he
Oh,
says,
likewise, likewise.
to continue by extracting from the darkness or life, by promoting, by sourcing, abandoning the husk to seek the light. Exactly. I think that kind of sums it all up for us. Is there anything else that you want to say, Susan?
Oh, I had a question for you. Um, Reading about it from Sally Kempton, and she says Shakti is about the goddesses of yoga, and you know lots about yoga. You know lots about the goddesses. So, what is that connection? As I said, I've been practicing yoga for over 40 years on the mat, but also a lot of the meditation side and the prana and pranayama and those things, which I recognize also come under Shakti and the Hindu tantric tradition. But why is it called the goddesses of yoga?
Well, some of the tantra is one of the, and Deb may be able to pop in here if she's still on. I'd love to hear from her. Um, Tantra is one of those words that also has a lot of different meanings, like Shakti does. So Tantra means to web and to expand. So it's actually a technology that weaves us together and also allows us to expand our consciousness. Within Tantra, there's the tantras, there's texts, and then there is the stream of a school of Tantra. Within
Mm.
that, there's more schools. And so the Tantra that Sally Kempton and most of my teachers, I started studying yoga, more of a classical yoga, and then moved in and found Tantra. And for many people still, when they hear the word Tantra, it's all about sex. and and sex and drugs and rock and roll. Isn't that what we do?
Is
And
that what appealed?
yeah, yeah, I think maybe. But it's just a small piece of that. What it does is taught some of the schools went to the extreme of how can they push their boundaries to the extreme and still stay aligned, right, with source energy. So that's where that sort of came from. But from Sally's school, it was more Southern India too. And Southern India has a very feminine way of looking at source. So it's the goddess energy, where the north of India has a little bit more of Shiva energy, a little bit more masculine. So Sally wrote from this uh, lens of looking through the goddess, and she had sort of personal experience. So Shakti is transformative. And it's just a way of explaining, I think, these energies, and that it has this. So there's a story. Maybe we could end with this story, and I might not get it totally correct. So forgive me if you're out there and you're listening and you're like, that's not right. Um, but there's a story of Shiva and Shakti and consorts. And Shiva is that masculine sort of stability of the world, right? Unmanifested. And Shakti is that creative, wild, manifested energy. And so they're having this conversation after being together and hanging out and doing the sex, drugs, and rock and roll part of it, the relationship. And she asks him, tell me the meaning of the universe, please, love. What is the meaning of the universe? And he says to her, don't you know, love? Don't you know? And he also called her Shri, which means auspiciousness or beauty. Don't you know, Shri? It's you. So the beauty of the universe from the tantric point of view, the purpose of the universe is this divine feminine. And to circle back to what we talked about, you can't have that without the other. So
No,
they
they
were
need each other, don't they? They
needing.
love each other. It's a continual dance, isn't it?
It's a continual dance. Yeah, the mystical, magical dance of Shiva and Shakti. And you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, just like you can't have creation without death. And this is why we need to recognize both sides, don't we, of what is needed now.
Yes.
That the toughness and the beauty and the fierce love that we have for the world. Yeah, thank you for the story. I really like that.
Oh,
And because it is transformational, isn't it? I mean, this is why I was saying it's the grace of knowledge. It's sacred, and it's not just learning history about kings and queens and dates and all of that. It's learning a way of being and a language when you take on Shakti that is transforming for ourselves and for others, isn't it? And you ended with the story. I thought I would end, and thank you everybody for being with us.
yes,
Um,
yes.
yeah, is just to quickly run through the different sort of goddesses that Sally Kempton mentions in her book. We've got Durga, who we've mentioned, who's the warrior, the cosmic protector and empowering mother. Lakshmi, who you mentioned, the goddess of good fortune, wealth, and inner and outer abundance. Kali, who most people will be familiar with, the mysterious, terrifying, fiercely loving goddess who brings radical change into your life and ultimately dissolves all forms into the void. Parvati, mountain lady, the goddess of the sacred marriage, the divine yoginini who embodies the power of creative will. Sarasvati, the flowing one, the goddess of language, creative intuition, music, eloquence, and speech. Sita, who you mentioned, is the faithful wife, guardian of the womb, goddess of the earth and its mysteries. Radha, the goddess of erotic devotional love, who carries the gift of divine longing and mystical surrender. And there's a few more, but I'll just leave it there because I sometimes think it's like I've been studying it the last week or so, and just which goddess do I want to be in touch with? Which goddess do I need today?
Yes,
And
I think that's a
having that practice.
yes, that's yes, yes, yes. Let's kind of thank you for that. Thank you for that. That's beautiful. And I think that's important is that to remember that we have those energies, all of those energies within us. And some of us are just our personality wise tend to be more of one than the other. And at different times in our lives, our personal lives, and externally what's happening, we can call on them. Several months ago, I was in a really, really challenging time, and uh, Durga was by my side. You know, I just needed to almost like put her on every single day to get through what needed to get through. And whether it's whimsical or woo woo or it might seem silly, it was to me something that I can do to remind myself that I did have this inner strength. I did have this fortitude. I did have this warrior aspect to myself. So, whatever it is that each of us feels and what we need, that's part of the knowing ourselves, is what you just said. Like, okay, today, how do I feel? How's my body? What's my body telling me? And who do I need to put on today? And go
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, because we do need extra powers now, don't we?
We do.
We're against a formidable enemy, and let's call in the cosmic powers of the Shakti, the goddesses, and the gods. And thank you very much for that, Paula. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I hope other people have as well. And thank you very much for joining us all. It's been such a pleasure to have this talk, and I wish you well with whatever you're going to be doing today.
Thank you. Thank you. And to end with Deb, the goddesses show us so many different ways that we could experience life. And Randolph says, thanks for the opportunity to expand understanding and reduce the woo woo of Shakti. Thank you both. From Chrissy, lots to think on. Thank you all so much for being here and spending afternoon or morning or somewhere in between. And if you're out there marching today, please be safe, enjoy, and little things can make changes. So love to all. Thanks,
They
Susan.
all do. They all do. Thank you, Paulette. Yeah, everything we do makes a difference because it's energy.
Yes,
Everything is energy.
everything
Thank
is.
you.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.